Smack! So, of course, I gotta capitalize on this Will Smith, Chris Rock incident that took place at the 2022 Oscars. However, I'm not gonna attack it from a celebrity gossip angle. For the most part, when I speak on celebrities, whether it's on my platform or another platform, I try to speak on things from a more three-dimensional aspect. When it comes to gossip, you can get gossip anywhere. People gossip every day, B. But like I've said quite a few times before, and will continue to say, is that nothing happens in a vacuum. Now, before I go in on what's going on out there in the Matrix at the moment, for the ones out there who are more inclined to say it's not that deep, that's cool. This isn't for you then. So if you're one of those it's not that deep type of folks, then move along. This isn't for you. My content is for the people out there who are critical thinkers. The people out there who like thought-provoking shit. The people out there who fuck with quote-unquote deep shit. That's who my content is for. So if that's not what you're into, like I said, move along. This is not for you. As I've said before, I am a content creator. So I'm going to take what took place at the 2022 Oscars and yeah, of course I'm going to make some content out of it. How could I not? The fuck? As I've stated before, I'm a content creator. So of course I'm going to take something that just happened out there in the Matrix and make some content out of it. Why would I not make content out of it? Especially if it's content that is meaningful and has some substance to it. Why would I not create some content out of that? Why would I not get some mileage out of what's going on out there? Why would I not get some mileage out of the current events of today? Come on now, I do this internet thing. I've been doing this internet thing. I've been putting out content. So it's only right that I would take this incident and make content out of that. Just being real. As we all know, Will Smith smacking the shit out of Chris Rock on national TV was seen by millions, possibly billions of people. It's obviously something that broke the internet. So let's get into it. We saw Will Smith, a world-renowned actor, smack Chris Rock, a world-renowned comedian. Also, we saw a man make a joke about another man's wife. We saw a husband go and defend his wife's honor. And we saw a black man smack another black man. Unfortunately, multiple things happened at once. This incident happened on a television program. Program meaning to inform the mind. Programming the mind to think a certain way. Or to think in a certain direction. What we saw was black conflict. What we saw was more programming for the masses to buy into the idea of the quote-unquote angry black man. What we saw was more programming for the masses to buy into the idea of black on black conflict. I would have said black on black crime, but no crime was committed. So we're not going to use the term black on black crime. I'm going to just say black on black conflict. Either which way, we saw two black persons, two black men in this case, be in conflict with one another. This programming suggests to the masses that black people, celebrity or otherwise, famous or otherwise, just don't know how to act in public. Now, I see the suggestive programming for what it is. But I'm going to just say, fuck all that. As a black man living in a white-dominated society, oftentimes black people, we have to keep ourselves in check in order to possibly not offend white sensibilities. This goes for black men and black women, black children as well. When we go out there in the real world and we have to walk around in society, it's like we have to walk around eggshells. We have to do just enough, but not too much, so that we don't possibly offend white sensibilities. We have to do just enough to make sure that people feel safe around us. We have to do just enough to make sure that people don't see us as a threat. We have to talk a certain way. We have to dress a certain way. We have to act a certain way, just so the people around us don't feel uncomfortable. We as black people are always expected to act in a professional manner. We have to act in a professional manner at all times. If someone were to ask me why, I would say because we don't want to come off as the quote unquote angry black man or the quote unquote angry black woman. Black people are the most disrespected people on the planet, yet we're always expected to regulate ourselves. We are always expected to turn the other cheek. We are always expected to take the high road. We are always expected to forgive. I'll just say this, and I know there's people out there who will agree, but I will say that black people should not have to be under that microscope. We shouldn't have to regulate ourselves in order to make others around us feel safe. There are times when we just have to say, fuck what everybody else thinks and do what's in the best interest of our livelihood. If that means defending your loved one on national TV, then so be it. If that means making others uncomfortable and possibly seeing you in a different way because of something that you reacted to, then so be it. Black people as a group should be able to move in this world freely and through our own self-determination. We should be able to do all that without having the fear of not making non-black people feel safe around us. In regards to Will Smith and Chris Rock, one black man did turn the other cheek. The other black man, as we know, did the smacking. Two things happened at once. One black man was seen acting violently, and the other black man took the high road in the face of said violent act. Like I've said before, and I'm gonna say it again, I didn't create this content for gossip. We already know about Will and Jada's unique marriage. I'm gonna just say unique. Call it what you want to call it. I'm gonna just say unique. We already know about Jada's entanglement. We already know that prior to the 2022 Oscars, Jada Pinkett-Smith boycotted the Oscars in the past. We already know that that boycott was called Oscars So White. And for those who know already, know that the Oscars is a white program. Now that should be no secret, but the fact is a conflict between two black men happened on that same white program, the Oscars. Obviously, the Oscars has been around for a long time now, and it's a program that can be viewed worldwide. There's been some talk in the Matrix about how viewership and ratings have fallen. Whether it's true or not, I'm not going to get into that. I can see that, yeah, probably the viewership and the ratings could have dropped. I can see that. I can see that as time goes on, there's less and less interest in the Oscars. Less interest in watching it, less interest in hearing about it, less interest in talking about it. I could see that. I could definitely see that. I most certainly can see that. Some people say that what took place was a humiliation ritual. I won't say whether I agree or disagree with that notion, but what I will say is that, yeah, this was a ritual of some kind. This was yet another thing that occurred that is a distraction to the masses, a distraction from more important things, a distraction from more pressing things going on in the world. The prices of food and gas has gone up. There's the Russia and Ukraine conflict. There's conflict in different parts of Africa. And to add on to those things that I just mentioned, we might not be completely out of the woods when it comes to this COVID situation. There has also been some talk in the Matrix about another possible COVID type of event that could occur. It could be something else aside from the virus, or it could be a virus, or it could be not. But something else is coming that could possibly cause another pandemic. There's been talk in the Matrix that this pandemic could be far greater. And when I say greater, I'm talking about on a bigger scale. That's what I mean. It could be far bigger than the pandemic that started in 2020. Celebrity BS is another distraction. At the end of the day, celebrity BS is another part of the bread and circuses. It diverts people's attention away from the greater threat to humanity. It inches the powers that be closer to taking away our rights and freedoms as human beings. We live in a world of sophisticated slavery. So when it's all said and done, everything that happens is just another way to re-enslave us, to get us more and more sucked into the program, to get us more and more stuck in the matrix. More and more stuck in the matrix, so we will never unplug from the matrix. Will Smith smacking Chris Rock was not just a husband defending his wife. It was a black man defending a black woman. We saw the black man defend the black woman. Unfortunately, in this case, yeah, it was a black man versus another black man. But one black man was defending his wife, a black woman. I understand that there's different views, different opinions, different outlooks on this whole thing. Some people might feel that Will Smith was out of line. They might have felt like he was out of pocket for what he did. They might feel like, well, Chris Rock is a comedian and there should be nothing off limits for a comedian. I agree with that. I personally will never push for censorship, ever. However, I will say that there are always consequences. And when it comes to freedom of speech, that doesn't mean freedom from consequences. So, yeah, we can say whatever we want, but the fact is, there are consequences to that. The fact is, everybody is not going to respond the same way to what we're saying. So yeah, we have freedom of speech and we should continue to have it. But you're never free from the consequences of said freedom of speech. Now, when it comes to comedians and really entertainers in general, I don't believe in censorship. I believe that comedians and entertainers overall should always have the freedom to say what they want to say. I don't necessarily believe there are limits. However, I do, and I know that sounds contradictory, because how can I believe in one thing in one breath, but then believe in the other in another? And I think it's a complex thing. I think there's some gray area there. I think there are areas that we can consider out of bounds. There might be a general consensus that people's family members are off limits. And that's something I'm for. I believe that people's family members should be off limits, especially if that family member is going through something. I think they should be off limits. But see, the comedian or the entertainer or whoever says something about a person's family member should know that consequences could ensue. And if that means somebody smacks the shit out of you, that's what comes with it. So you have to be prepared for that. And when I say you, I'm talking about the comedian or the entertainer overall. You as a entertainer, someone who pushes the boundaries of free speech, should be prepared for any type of consequence that comes. And I include myself in that because I make music, I rap. So I personally don't want anyone limiting my freedom of speech. I want to say whatever I want to say. I don't want to be censored. But at the same time, there's a part of me that knows that some things are just out of bounds. And that's my personal choice. I'm going to use my freedom of speech for other things, for many things. But certain things I'm just not going to do. And that's my personal choice. But somebody else who's a rapper or a singer or an actor, an actress, a comedian, or whoever else, they could decide that, well, fuck that. Nothing's off the table. I'm going to say whatever I want about whoever I want at any time. And that's their personal choice. But once again, that person or persons better realize that there are consequences that can come. There are consequences that can come from having that stance. So just be prepared for it. Be prepared for what's to come. And if that means possibly being physically assaulted, that's what comes of it. And for the record, I don't advocate for violence. But there are certain instances where violence could be necessary, especially in defense of yourself and in defense of your loved ones. I'm all for violence at that point in time when it is to defend yourself and to defend your loved ones. All human beings have a capacity for violence. Every single last one, every single last human being on the planet Earth has a capacity for violence. That capacity should be tapped into when necessary. Of course, we don't want conflict. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want anybody to end up dead. We don't want the bad things to happen. Understood. However, it's part of humanity. And if we want to limit violence in any way possible, then we need to enact methods that will decrease violence. Now, if that means that you, as an entertainer, or someone who's not an entertainer, has to bite your tongue, has to censor yourself, to not step out of bounds, to possibly offend someone who just might react violently, then maybe you might want to rethink your stance a little bit. Just food for thought. But to go back to Will Smith and Chris Rock and what took place, I would say that that's a symbolic win for black people. And I say that because it showed the world that the black man will protect the black woman. And yeah, we've seen instances of that on national TV before, so that's nothing new. But the Oscars were on that world stage where you have people of all races and ethnicities and different ages and things like that tuning in. Yeah, the world needed to see that. The world needed to see that the black man will protect the black woman. So symbolically, I would call that a win. We have to remember that the black woman is the most disrespected woman on the planet. So when the black man steps up to protect the black woman, that's big. And when that black man steps up and shows the world that you can't fuck with the black woman, you can't fuck with his black woman, that's big. The black woman is oftentimes not as protected as the white woman. The black woman is oftentimes not as protected as the Asian woman. The black woman is oftentimes not as protected as the Latino woman. The black woman is oftentimes not as protected as the Arab woman. We could go on, but with all of that being said, yeah, of course, every single woman from every race isn't protected. Of course, there are dangers that all women face in this world. And unfortunately, some of those dangers are perpetuated by men. But overall, the womanhood of different races of women are protected. Other races of men protect the womanhood of their women. I personally think that black men should protect the womanhood of black women. And I might catch a little flack for everything I just said, but I know that there are black men who do protect black women all day, every day. So if you're a black man who's watching this and you might possibly be offended by what I just said, just know that if it don't apply, let it fly. If you're a black man who protects black women, then what I said is not about you, obviously. If you know that you protect black women, nothing to see here. But unfortunately, there are black men who don't protect black women. There are black men who are just not inclined to protect black women. So I have to speak to that. Overall, when it comes to Will Smith smacking Chris Rock, like I said before, many different things happened all at once. But symbolically, there's a W in there. We can look at all the faults of Will Smith and Chris Rock, and we could pick apart what this person should have or shouldn't have done, or what this other person shouldn't have done or what they should have done. But within all of that, there's a W in there somewhere. But to move along, I'm going to talk about the Black News Channel, or as some would call it, BNC. Long story short, BNC shut down. Stick a fork in them. They're done. Black News Channel is done. My take on the Black News Channel is that they were really some kind of shell company. It wasn't a shell company in its more well-known definition. It wasn't a shell company in that way. I understand that shell company has a different definition. That's why I say shell company of some kind. When I say shell company of some kind, what I'm saying is the Black News Channel had no major assets. In other words, it wasn't a major asset. In other words, it was pretty empty with its purposes. BNC was a news channel that tried to act like it was a black news channel. But the fact is, it was yet another company that claimed to represent black people, but was owned by non-black persons. It was a so-called black program that was said to be in the best interests of black people. The truth is, it was another program for the purposes of black misleadership. It was a program with a majority black staff who were just working for the highest bidder. The highest bidder being non-black, basically being white corporate interests. Like all other black misleaders, BNC was a network on puppet strings. This wasn't a company that was owned and operated by black people who really do have black people's best interests in mind. That's not who this company was owned by. And someone could be like, you keep talking about black interest. What is black interest? What are you talking about? What do you mean by black interest? What do you mean by black interest? When I talk about black people's interests, I'm talking about black empowerment via economics. That's what I'm talking about. And part of that talk is reparations for descendants of American slaves. Reparations is a big part of that. And while reparations isn't for the whole African diaspora in America, I think that black people who are not descendants of American slaves should support descendants of American slaves. Whether you want to call them ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, or you want to call them FBA, Foundational Black Americans, I think black people on the outskirts of that, I think black people on the outside of that should support. And when it's all said and done, I think that there needs to be a global effort for reparations for all black people worldwide. That goes for black people in the Caribbean, black people in Africa, black people in Europe, whatever, wherever. reparations should be a global effort. But there definitely needs to be talk of reparations here in America. Now, I think that is part of black people's interests. Obviously, there are some black people who just aren't for it. I don't care. And if that's you, this isn't for you then. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. I do know that much. So if you're a black person or persons who is against what I just said, beat it. This isn't for you. When I say black interests, I'm also talking about tangible resources for the black community at large, not symbolic gestures or tokenism. The first black this, the first black that. Fuck all that. That's all symbolic. And that's cool for the black individual who gets accomplished. Not knocking that at all. But that doesn't do anything for the masses of black people. It's just symbolic. That's it. And I think as a people, we need to move past symbolism. At the end of the day, symbolism don't mean shit. At the end of the day, symbolism means something to that individual, and that's fine. But that symbolism doesn't do a damn thing for the rest of black people, the rest of black society. It doesn't mean anything. It's empty. So I think we need to get past that. If the discussion isn't about black empowerment and black liberation, then the discussion is pointless. The discussion is pointless. There's nothing to talk about. What are we talking about? If we're not talking about those two things that I mentioned, black empowerment and black liberation, what are we talking about? We're not talking about anything. If you're trying to talk about something else with me, you're wasting my time. We have nothing to discuss. If you're a person in a powerful position, whether we want to call you a politician or something else, if you're not discussing black empowerment, we have nothing to talk about. There is nothing to discuss. You go left, I'll go right. The discussion is over before it began. The typical liberal Democrat talking points are a waste of time, especially if those talking points are not really in the interest of black people. If those talking points aren't speaking on anything of substance, it is a waste of time. Now, when it comes to BNC, they caught this L because the black viewership wasn't there. And we could even argue the non-black viewership wasn't there. It just wasn't there. It wasn't enough. They might have got some views. They might have got some engagement, but it wasn't enough to keep the lights on. And I'm not one to kick people while they're down, because I know that with BNC shutting down, a lot of people lost jobs. I'm not going to kick people while they're down. I don't advocate for people losing jobs. And a lot of those people were black people. So black people lost jobs when BNC shut down. I'm highly against the fact that there were black people who lost jobs. I know how that feels to lose a job. I'm sure a lot of us out there knows how it feels to lose a job. I do think that there is a symbolic aspect to this as well. And when I say this, I'm referring to BNC's failure. This could be looked at as another cog in the wheel of black failure. But here's the thing. You can't be a so-called black network and think that you're going to get a real black audience. I mean, sure, you'll get some black people to tune in. You'll get some non-black people to tune in. But there's not enough. There's not enough of that. You can't not speak to the real interest of black people and expect to retain a black audience. I think it should be pretty clear that the left wing sees black people as stupid, and the right wing too. But the left wing tries to pander to black people. The left wing, the Democrats, usually have the loyalty of black people because unlike their right wing counterpart, the left wing will at the very least entertain a conversation about racism. At the very least, they'll sit and listen to a black person's complaints about racism. Now, doing something about it, that's a different story. But the left wing, they'll sit and listen. But that's where it stops. When it's all said and done, if black people want the typical left wing BS, all they have to do is tune into CNN or MSNBC or any other liberal left-leaning media outlet out there. What made BNC any different? BNC was just the same old, same old. BNC was representative of more black misleadership. The Black News Channel did have some content for black people. But in reality, the Black News Channel was really another white liberal organization under the guise of black media. With all of that being said, it was bound to take a L. It was bound to take a L in a time where black people's consciousness and political IQ is raising up. Black people are waking up to the media's tricks and the media's deception. Of course, there are still some black people who are still asleep and will be easily led astray by the symbolism and the tokenism. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. There's always going to be the folks out there who just don't care. They don't care about black empowerment. They don't care about black liberation. They don't care to put two and two together and deal with the threat of the system of white supremacy. That's fine. Because as long as there are black people waking up or are already awake and can see through the smoke screen and are actively doing something about it, that's all that matters. Unplugging from the matrix that keeps black people in a perpetual cycle of escapism and failure is a win, in my opinion. Even if that unplugging might be slow, depending on how you look at things, it's a win. I think that as long as there are some of us out there who are deprogramming ourselves and unplugging ourselves from the matrix, whatever that looks like, it's good. Because eventually we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. As long as we stay active, we stay focused, regardless of the threats that we face, regardless of the obstacles that we face, regardless of the enemy or enemies that we have to deal with, we'll be fine. We'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. So those are my thoughts on some of the current events out there in the matrix. You may agree, you may disagree, but I wanted to put this out there get some content out there in the mix, maybe give people out there a different outlook on things. Maybe, maybe not. But this is out there. This is my 2 cents. I appreciate the ones who have watched and listened. More to come. Same Pat time, same Pat channel.